Welcome to the 6.4 podcast on friction. And the main idea of this podcast, the force of friction between the surfaces depends on the kinds of the material in contact and how much the surfaces are pressed together. So force, we all know already friction we already know is a force, and it affects the motion. And it acts on materials that are in contact with each other. And it always acts in the direction opposite relative motion. It's because the irregularities between two surfaces kind of catch on each other. And here's a kind of a microscopic view of these two surfaces right here hitting each other. And that's what friction is caused by. Now, here's a great example about friction. Rubber against concrete produces more friction than steel against steel. So that's why concrete road dividers have now been put in place to replace steel rails. And it's more effective than the friction produced by a steel body sliding against a steel rail. And here's a picture of the two of them. You can see concrete ones, but the old ones used to be these steel barriers here. And they would just mess up your car, whereas now your car tire will hit the bottom of this barrier and slow you down quicker without doing as much damage to your car. So both liquids and gases are called fluids because they flow. So we're talking about fluid friction, which occurs when an object pushes through a liquid that it's moving through. And it's the friction of liquids is appreciable even at low speeds, and anybody who's trying to drive a car through air, you know that there's friction there, and that's why cars are streamlined. Anybody tries swimming, you're going to deal with friction through your swimming. So air resistance is the friction acting on something moving through air. And when friction is present, an object may move with constant velocity even when an outside force is applied to it. In other words, you're moving at a constant velocity, and you have a force applied to you, but you aren't accelerating, and that's because there is no net force. The friction force balances the applied force, maybe what you're pushing, and what ends up happening is the net force is zero, so there's no acceleration. So a free body diagram showing all the forces on an object is a diagram that we use for this. And here you can see this girl is pushing the crate to the right, and the friction's acting on the left. And if you look, the push is as big as the friction, so therefore it won't be accelerating. Here's the air resistance. This bag is falling through the air, and the weight pulling the bag down is equal to the air resistance pushing the bag back up, so the bag is not going to accelerate. Two forces act on a book resting on a table: its weight and the support force. Does the force of friction act as well? And the answer is no, because the book is not moving. It has to be sliding or tend to slide, and that wouldn't occur on a flat table. So what factors affect the force of friction between surfaces? The force of friction depends on the surfaces. The force of friction between the surfaces depends on the kinds of material in contact and how much the surfaces are pressed together.